But you presented this idea of setting the example, of showing how to live that life. Because he said, I don't want to just give our kids a better life. I want to show them how you live a life that's meaningful.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. I am Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth, family connection, and parenting adult kids. And today I want to share a concept that Emily and I love this, and I think we do too, both of us, but it's the idea of what we call double return parenting. And I think the best way to describe it is maybe with an example. I studied music, and so when we lived in New York City, I would do a lot of writing and composing, and to have peace and quiet, we had moved the piano into our bedroom. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and so to just have a workspace where I could think and listen and not be distracted by noisy, rambunctious kids.
Because we had 5 of those.
Because we had 5 kids. And so the piano was in our bedroom, tucked under, at various stages. It was next to the bed, then it was under the bed when we built the loft. Anyway, the point being that at a certain stage, I decided to move the piano from the bedroom to the living room because I worked with headphones, and so I could work silently in my room, and I would just create something, and my kids never knew about it. And so when we moved the piano out to the living room, I still worked with headphones, and I still needed some quiet, but they could see what I was doing, and in the end, I could share it with them, and they saw what went into, in this case, writing a song or a piece of music or a show, and it sparked something for them. And I don't want to be telling the whole story, and so feel free to jump in where you want, but I feel like the kids started to tinker on the piano. Is that safe to say?
Oh yeah, for sure. They were like, this is what we do at our house. We play music and we write songs.
Yeah.
This is just what we do.
And eventually, so they started to play piano and teach themselves. And after a while, I started to teach myself guitar and started to do more writing and composing on the guitar. And they also picked up the guitar and the ukulele. The ukulele was a little bit easier for their small hands. But I would write something and then I would share it with them. And they would tell me what they thought. And then eventually we would start writing songs together.
Or they would write something and share it with us. And then we would tell them what we thought.
Yeah, I think it grew. I mean, first we would write together, and then eventually they've become very skilled and accomplished and talented songwriters in their own right. The 3 oldest all write and have recorded songs. And I guess bringing this back to double return parenting is that as a parent, I get the joy and the satisfaction of doing something that lights me up, that gives me energy. And as my kids see me doing that, they get to do the things that light them up and energize them. And in this case, they all started to write songs, but it's not always going to be a 1-for-1. It's not going to be they get interested in the same thing, like, oh, I love baseball, so they love baseball, or oh, I love cross-stitching, so they become cross-stitchers, or whatever it is. There was a time when I used to cross-stitch. I don't know if you knew this about me.
Hey, I'm discovering new things every day, keeping it fresh.
It doesn't light me up, so I don't do it anymore. But anyway, it doesn't always have to be a 1-for-1, but I think the idea that as an adult, as a father and as a husband, doing the things in my life that bring me joy gives my kids permission to do the same thing in their own life. And then that can feed back and forth.
I want to say 2 things about this.
Yeah.
One is that the things that bring you joy don't only solely bring joy. They often also bring a lot of frustration. So I don't want anybody listening to think we're talking about like, if it doesn't bring joy, then you need to cut it out of your life, because those things that are really satisfying, they take effort to create, to grow into. There's a discipline that's required in it. And a lot of people don't like that word, but your kids saw you at the piano day after day after day. They saw you rewriting. They saw you saying, this isn't working. They saw you lose files, whatever. Not that you were someone who would lose files, but maybe something would happen with the computer. And anyway, they saw the frustrating parts about the creative process and the thing that brought you joy. They saw that there was effort and sometimes struggle required, but that in the end, the joy was worth it. Like it was a triumph. And so I just want to bring that part out. We're not saying, oh, if you're not feeling happy today, then stop doing that thing.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that, because I think they saw that a song, because oftentimes they would just see, oh, here's the final product. When I would come out of our bedroom and say, like, here's the final product, they never saw the iterations and the drafts. And this way they saw, oh, like, Dad has rewritten that chorus 5, 7, 9 times. Or they would see, they would see how one verse would slowly change and evolve as it got played and sung more and more. And so they learned about how things can happen gradually, and that it's not just like go in, do the work and come out. And so, yeah, I think they saw that there's a process to it. And I think it was vulnerable for me, because I would go and I would create something or share something when it was only half baked.
80%.
80% of the time? Or
No.
80%?
I mean, that we kind of have a rule of, once I've got this song to 80%, it's ready for public consumption. And at home, we might see it when it was only 50% ready or 40% ready. But our kids knew, I'm not going to wait until this is 100% ready before I share it with a friend or share it, publicly. I know that if it's 80% there, it's solid enough to put out in the world.
Yeah. And sometimes it would just be like, hey, here's a chorus that I like.
Yeah.
And they would realize, okay, Dad has created a fragment, and it's going to be a part of something else. And again, for most people are not songwriters. Most people are not composers. And so I don't think that, in some ways, this might be a tough metaphor, but I think just the idea of like doing the things that we care about. Like you say, it doesn't always bring joy. It can still be there can still be a kind of a grind to it, or at least a grit to it.
Mm-hmm.
But also doing those things, and also really just making sure that kids see that there's a struggle and a process, and also that it's okay to not have something great to show for it. That seeing along the way the kind of the I want to say the ugly duckling version of it, but that's not it. It's just like the awkward. It's good for your kids to see you fail, and see you trying.
Yeah.
And failing and overcoming and persisting, and also this was not the intention of this, but I realized that we would then spark each other with songs, and so. It was very much, it became, I remember reading in a book about Lennon and McCartney and the Beatles, and how it was slightly competitive between them. And I don't think it ever really got competitive between members of our family, but as we would create, it would inspire us to go create more, because it just gave more and more permission, and it gave more and more fuel to that process.
Absolutely. This is getting into another concept that we like to call the current. If there's something you want to be doing in your life, you need to get around people who are doing that thing, and then you will just naturally do it more and more. It's kind of the idea when maybe your parents, when you were young, were like, oh, don't hang out with that crowd. They're a bad crowd. There's so many crowds, and you should get into the crowd that's going where you want to go, because then it'll just be so much easier than staying in the crowd you're in and trying to go somewhere else. Just kind of leveraging that current and moving forward with it. But the other thing I had wanted to bring up is with double return parenting is I remember when we were really young parents, or parents of really young kids, and Eric was presenting this parenting philosophy to me, and I wasn't really on board with it at first. I thought of the idea of, we've brought this child into the world, and now we're going to sacrifice everything we can to raise them up, like they'll walk on our backs or stand on our shoulders, or like whatever it might be. Like, now our noble duty is to sacrifice everything for them so that they can rise above us, and I don't mean to say it in a way that sounds condescending, but I had kind of a martyr complex about it. So I'm making a little bit fun of myself. There's so many great families that come from a very sacrificial narrative, as like especially the classic immigrant story. Like, my parents gave up everything to bring us to this country so that we could have a better opportunity, and they had this life that wasn't full of the things that brought them joy. Maybe, unless the thing that brought them joy was that they wanted to do that for their kids. But Eric said, instead of being the martyr sacrifice parent, I want to be, because there will always be sacrifice in relationship as you try to achieve harmony, of setting the example, of showing how to live that life. Because he said, I don't want to just give our kids a better life. I want to show them how you live a life that's meaningful, that's full of pursuing things that you're curious about, that you're interested in, that you think are worth the effort, the struggle, overcoming obstacles for. And I remember one day Eric was sitting at the desk working on a musical, trying to get it produced. It's not just writing the choruses and the phrases. It's like, now we got to find a production team and the creative staff and the actors and the theater and the investors and the whole thing. And you were sitting at the desk doing that. And you said, this didn't work. It didn't work out this time. It's not going to be in this theater with these producers or whatever it might be. And you were feeling pretty dejected. And I said, you are such a great example for our kids. And you said, I don't know what I'm an example of, and I said, you're an example of the persistence required to pursue a dream. So whether that's a physical goal you have, or a business you want to build, or a book you want to write, or whatever it might be, a relationship you want to heal, you were showing them year after year the effort that is required. And so at first I wasn't into it because I had seen a different model and I had kind of admired a different model, but I said, let's give it a try. And it really came home to me when we started homeschooling our own kids. And I realized environment is a third of the education, and the example we're setting is going to be so huge. So I wanted them to learn how to write, but I didn't want them to hate it. I didn't want to just start out with grammar and punctuation and all of that stuff. Like, once you learn the rules, then you're allowed to write. We wanted to start focusing on, what's your voice? Do you have anything interesting to say? Do you have anything important to say? And so where I decided to begin with them was I started writing articles for magazines. I started submitting, articles. And just like with the music, they saw that it wasn't just something I sat down one afternoon and 45 minutes later I had this published worthy article. They saw me digging in, researching, editing, going from longer versions to shorter versions, rephrasing, word choice, change all the verbs, rereading to them. And they started to see, oh, it's okay if I don't get it right on the first time. It's okay if it doesn't seem easy. It's okay. It's actually normal. This is the normal process of writing. It doesn't just typically flow out of your brain in a clear, easy, engaging way. And so they felt like they understood that it was okay to do lots and lots of attempts and feel good about every attempt along the way before they found the one that they felt like, this is what I want to share with the world. So
it gave them permission to try and not succeed.
Yeah.
Knowing that they could have many tries.
I think it gave them the truth that the faster you fail, the faster you get to that place of success. And so they became less fearful of failure. And you can imagine the applications that has across your whole life, whether it's like applying to different schools or trying out for this program or applying for jobs or pursuing any kind of interest or relationship and saying, oh, that didn't work the first time. Let me try again. I'll ask that girl out again another time.
I think for me, it boils down to this. When it's going back to double return parenting, as we, as moms and dads, as parents, have the courage to step out and do the things that really light us up and energize us, even if it's a hobby, if it's a career, great, whatever it is, as we do that, we are showing our kids how to do it in their own lives. Because I believe that every parent wants the best for their kids. They have big dreams. They believe in their kids and they want to see them do fun, beautiful things that make them happy. Guess what? The best way, or I guess I'll say the way that we've become most familiar with and experienced the most success is by modeling that. Not by just wishing it for them, but by saying, I'm going to try and do that myself first so that my kids get to see what that process looks like. And they learn that it's not a smooth, straight line upward to the right. They learn that it's a jagged ride. They learn, and whatever it is, insert goal, whatever we're doing as parents, we're showing them and modeling the process, and that's going to serve our kids well. And the double return part is, one, we get the joy of going on that journey ourselves, and two, we get the second return of watching our kids go on it themselves. Because if we just model to them what we call sort of a conveyor belt default life, guess what model they're following? They're going to create a default conveyor belt life for themselves, and we will be sad that they missed out on living up to their full potential. And so the best thing we can do for them is to live up to our full potential, show them how it's done, and then let them follow in the way that makes sense to them. And that's brought us a lot of happiness for us and our kids.
And the good news is when they do that, the return just keeps increasing with every generation. Third return, fourth return.
Yeah, so we could call it like quadruple return,
just
great grandparenting.
The legacy ripples out.
Awesome. What could go right? Thanks so much for listening. Hey there, it's Eric. If you haven't already, you should really go sign up for one of our free discovery calls. Have you ever asked the question, what if, or wouldn't it be cool if? If you're like me and a lot of people, you answer that question, but kind of in a limited way. You don't really let yourself go there. And so what I'd love to do is get on a call with you and help you get past some of your limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs, and answer that question as boldly and beautifully as your imagination will allow. They're fun, they're free, they're painless. All you got to do is go to theawesomefactory.nyc/discovery, pick a time slot that works with you, and we'll spend a few minutes and help you go to an amazing place and help you discover what's possible in your life.